Today's session will be about structuring your answers. Most important aspect of answer writing is to read the question carefully and to understand the question. How can care economy be brought into monetized economy through women empowerment? The divorce rates in India are one of the lowest in the world. Your focus should be on not explaining a lot. Your focus should be on bringing in more data points, how care economy can be integrated into monetized economy, especially through women empowerment. Good evening, aspirants. Welcome to day 4 of the Mission Main series by PW Only IAS. Today's session will be about structuring your answers. In the mains examination, you're expected to write subjective answers to the questions so asked. You have to first remember that any answer will have 3 components to it. The first component to any answer will be its introduction. The second component to any answer will be its body. And the third component to any answer will be the conclusion. These 3 parts of any answer have 3 specific functions. The introduction is required to set the context for a discussion which is about to follow. The body part is where you address the requirements of the question directly. And the conclusion is like a nice touch to your answer where you decide to wrap it all up. But before writing an answer, the first and the most important aspect of answer writing is to read the question carefully and to understand the question. Not just that, the first step will require you to identify certain subparts and count the number of subparts so that you know which parts of the question to address and in how much measure. It begins by us understanding the subparts of a question. Read the question very carefully and look at the various subparts. Many times, these subparts are not explicitly stated in the question. For instance, take a look at this question. The question says, do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India? Now, if you look at the question itself, it on its own does not tell you how many subparts are there to the question. But if you read the question carefully and understand it, you will be able to find that this is an opinion-based question. Here he is asking you your opinion if you think that marriages in India as a sacrament are losing their value, especially in modern India. This means that first you will have to establish that marriage as an institution holds a certain sacramental value in modern India or in India in general. And then you will follow it up by discussing your opinion on whether marriages are losing their value or they are retaining their value. So first is to establish the sacrosanct nature and then give your opinion on whether it's actually losing its sacramental value or not. Like I said, there is no explicit mention of these 2 subparts in this question itself. Similarly, if you look at a question like this, here the question itself tells you what are the various subparts. Read the question. It says, distinguish between care economy and monetized economy. And then the second part of the question is, how can care economy be brought into monetized economy through women empowerment? Now it's quite explicit. There are 2 subparts. The first is to explain the difference between care economy and monetized economy. And the second part is how can care economy be integrated into monetized economy, especially through women empowerment. Now, let's try to see how do we introduce these questions. Like I said, the task of the introduction is to set the context for a discussion which is about to happen in the body part before we wrap the answer up. Let us look at handling this question itself. The first one says, do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India? Now, this question you can begin with an introduction about what marriages mean. You can start with a what or a why. Define what marriage means or define what the sacramental nature of marriage as an institution means in India. Once you have done that, thereafter you have to proceed to handle the body of this question. Now, like I said, it's an opinion-based question. He's asking you your opinion on what do you think is happening to marriages as an institution in India. Are they losing their value or are they retaining their value? That means there are two sides of the coin here. You will have to establish somehow that this marriage or marriage as an institution in India is losing its value, and especially losing its sacramental value. And your answer should also have some arguments which are trying to refute the claim. Firstly, in the introduction, what do? You establish the sacramental nature of marriage in India. In fact, you can speak about how in the Hindu social order, marriage is considered sacrosanct in nature, in the sense that it does not give any divorce rights either to the male or to the female. Thereafter, you can proceed to the body part. In the body part, first you'll have to emphasize upon what the question has been asking. You'll have to discuss why do you think the examiner thinks that marriage as a sacrament is losing its value. For that, you will have to have some supporting arguments. You can discuss the increasing number of divorce rates in the country, which the country has been witnessing of late. Not just that, you can also discuss how, in terms of forms and structure of marriage, how it has been changing, and how these changing forms of marriage or cohabitation are finding increased acceptance in India. You can discuss about same-sex marriages, you can discuss about live-in relationships, which is a change to the form and structure of marriage as an institution and its growing acceptance. You can also discuss how consumerism, materialism, hedonism is characterizing modern marriages. You can discuss the pomp and show, you can discuss dowry rates, everything in here. Thereafter, you can also discuss the emergence of something which is called plastic sexuality. You can bring in the advent of dating apps, which has helped, or you can say not helped really, which has actually influenced marriage as an institution in the country. Thereafter, you can discuss how, as India proceeds towards modernization, complete modernization, how we are witnessing trends of individualism amongst multiple people. We can also discuss in individualism, we can discuss the freedom that individuals today want in terms of their partner selection, wherein they are not just dependent on the sanction of their family members. They are finding an increasing say in the choice of their own partners. Thereafter, we can also discuss some legal and constitutional sanctions which have been given to right to privacy, same-sex marriages, interreligious marriages, coming in from the courts itself and the interpretation of various judgments. This is going to help you reinforce the point that yes, marriages, it may appear, are losing their sacramental value. However, this question is an implicit contradictory question where you have to address both sides of the same coin. The other aspect of this answer should be to refute this argument. Why do you think that this is an over-exaggeration? You will have to bring arguments in support. For example, the first argument should be about marital breakdown. Yes, we have witnessed that divorce rates in the country are increasing, but still the divorce rates in India are one of the lowest in the world, at about 13 out of 1,000 marriages. Between 2016 till about 2024, across the world, divorce rates have doubled down. In India, these divorce rates have increased, but still these are one of the lowest in the world. And in fact, you can also mention here that divorce rates are more common in urban India, not a phenomenon as common in rural India. You can also discuss how marriages are still considered sacrosanct, particularly in rural areas where it requires community sanction and family sanction in terms of mate selection or in terms of partner selection. In fact, you can also bring in elements of violence. You can also talk about marriage rates in the country, which surprisingly, between census 2001 and census 2011, have surprisingly increased. According to census 2001, marriage rates in India were about 47.7% for females, which has increased to 49.9% as per census 2011. Similarly, for men, it has increased from 43.6% according to census 2001 to about 46% in census 2011. You can also discuss, like I said, divorce rates are one of the lowest in the world. It's a 10 marker. There's not a lot of scope for you to be bringing in many arguments. If you can bring in 4 to 5 arguments in favor of this statement and 4 to 5 arguments against this statement, you will have no more space to write anything down. This is going to be a very, very succinct and a very, very short answer. Hence, your focus should be on not explaining a lot. Your focus should be on bringing in more data points, bringing in more arguments and examples which are self-explanatory in nature. But mind you, you will have to address both sides of the same coin because this is an opinion-based question. Now let's consider the second type of question, which was rather more explicit. The question on distinction between care economy and monetized economy, and how can care economy be brought into monetized economy through female empowerment. Now there are two parts to it. The first part has to go towards establishing the difference between core economy and monetized economy. The second part will have to be about how care economy can be integrated into monetized economy, especially through women empowerment. We'll have to address the first part, which is the difference between care economy and monetized economy. Now, monetized economy is where your output would be monetized. That means there will be a money value for the work. While care economy will be where you're not making it a part of your national income accounts. This is work which is not being monetized, for which you're not getting paid. However, you will have to make a careful distinction here. There is some amount of unpaid work which is included in our national income accounts, and some amount of unpaid work which is not included in our national accounts. For instance, any market production, anything that we are producing for sale in the market will automatically be a part of our national income accounts and hence a part of our monetized economy. Similarly, there are other unpaid work. For example, if you are working for your own enterprise, if you are producing for subsistence, which although unpaid is still a part of your national income accounts. Hence, it's a part of monetized economy. We know the monetary value of this work. While if you look at some other categories of work, for example, daily activities of household upkeep, for example, care work, taking care of the dependents and the sick, the children, the elderly, and all of these unpaid work which are being done voluntarily, this type of unpaid work is predominantly what is called care work. So you'll have to bring out this distinction that monetized economy does not mean that all the work involved there is paid work, which is say all the work there is done for market production. There is some element of work which is unpaid and yet a part of your national income accounts. For example, work done for your own family enterprises or subsistence or production for your own self-consumption. However, when you look at other categories of work which are not a part of your national income accounts, which includes daily upkeep of the household, taking care of the dependents, this part of work is called care work in general or care economy in particular. Now, once you have established the difference between the two, thereafter, you will have to address the second requirement of the question, which is about integrating care work with the mainstream economy, or which you can say with the monetized economy. Now, herein, you'll have to bring in some convincing arguments. You can talk about how the 3 R's, recognition of this work, reduction of this work, and redistribution of this work can help address the second part. First is about recognition of this work, which is to say giving visibility to unpaid work, which is also called care work. Giving visibility will involve providing information on the gender distribution of this kind of work and the time spent. You should know that most of the unpaid care work, the burden of it falls disproportionately on women. So, as per government documents, we will have to record what is the gender distribution of this work. Not just the gender distribution, but what is the amount of effort and time that gets spent on this kind of work. Not just that, we will also have to provide information on the drudgery involved and the time stress experienced by workers, which are predominantly women. Now, this is recognition of the agency of women who are disproportionately involved in the care activities or in care work. Thereafter, you can suggest reduction in this unpaid work. How do we do that? We can reduce this unpaid work through the use of technology. For example, providing fuel-efficient stoves for cooking in place of primitive stoves using fuel wood, wherein women had to travel distances to get this fuel wood. Right? Providing basic amenities at your doorstep so that women do not have to travel longer distances to fetch water. Through the use of technology and by providing infrastructural support, we can reduce the amount of burden which goes towards daily upkeep of households and taking care of the elderly and taking care of the children and the sick and disabled, basically your dependents. Now, these steps will release women from the burden of unpaid work and reduce their time stress to enjoy leisure and participate in productive work. So the first element is that of recognition of this work. The second element is that of reduction in this work. And the third element is actually more important for the sake of this answer, which is a redistribution of this work, which is going to challenge the traditional patriarchal norms. Now, how do you redistribute this work? This has to be brought forth through cultural evolution or through cultural change. But the government can also redistribute this work within the household by providing certain incentives to men involved. We can also discuss the incentives in the form of, let's say, a tax relief, incentives in the form of paternity leaves, certain incentives that will redistribute this work within the household itself, so that men feel more incentivized to do this kind of activity and share the burden of women of their households. Not just this, you can also speak of how the government can actually create a care economy, which is to say the same care work can be done by market forces, which will also help generate employment. Now, the government may consider providing incentives, like I said, to encourage the sharing of unpaid work by men. All of these three things are going to be absolutely critical in first recognizing the agency of women, recognizing the time spent by women on this kind of activities, recognizing the stress that women have to face to complete this kind of work. Not just that, once you have recognized that, the second step is that of reduction, and the third step is that of redistribution within the household. That means you'll have to have convincing arguments, not a lot of them, right, to justify the second part of the question. Once you have introduced these, address the body parts, the third aspect is that of concluding your answers. Now, like I said, many people lose so much sleep over this aspect, conclusion. In the real exam, you don't have a lot of time, especially you don't have a lot of real estate to be concluding your answers. In the first case, you can suffice by writing that marriage is as a sacrament, it may appear is losing its value, but that is, you can say, limited to the extent of urban areas more predominantly. While in the rural areas, it appears that marriage as a sacrosanct or as a sacrament is still retaining its value. You can have a one-liner to conclude that answer. And towards this part, you can suffice without having concluded this answer particularly once you have addressed these two questions. In fact, you can bring in the examples of certain government initiatives to address this particular answer's conclusion. Mind you, conclusion should not take a lot of your space and a lot of your time. So should not the introduction. The most amount of marks you're going to fetch when you address the requirements of the question directly, which is the body part itself. So in terms of time allocation, do not allocate a lot of time or space to either the introduction or to the conclusion. You should templatize the introduction and the conclusion many times. For example, towards introduction, you can start with a what or a why, which is to say, pick up a keyword in the question and define that keyword. You can start with that, or you can discuss the reason why that question may have been asked, its relevance from the current affairs itself. And towards the conclusion, you can suggest some remedial measures, you can suggest some government schemes, government initiatives, you can suggest some possible repercussions, basically anything which has not been directly asked in the question, but do not lose a lot of time and do not use a lot of space, especially towards both of these, the introduction and the conclusion. And with that said, the discussion in the today's session is over. We will take up optional answer writing in the next session to follow. I'll meet you there in day 5. Thank you.